every preacher has one sermon. And my sermon is, what does it look like coming down the street? What do all these big religious realities look like in our daily lives so that we might be able to recognize them and articulate them? So I asked myself, what does a spirituality of communion with the Trinity look like? Have I ever seen it? Have I ever experienced what Blessed John Paul expresses in that paragraph that we read? And I sat with it. And one of the first things that came to me was an experience that I had when I was first missioned to Colorado. When I was first assigned to Colorado, I was invited to give an evening in a parish that was just beginning the renew process. And we had a long and fruitful Friday evening together in Steamboat Springs. And I had a rare free Saturday, and I thought I'd explore a little. And the pastor suggested I drive across to I-70, which is a beautiful trip in itself, and then go stop at the Trappist Monastery in Snowmass and stop in Aspen, etc., etc. This was before I-70 was widened through Glenwood Canyon, so it was a narrow way, if you've never been there before, where the cliffs were right here and the river is right here. And it was also before the aspen blight and the evergreen blight struck. It was a spectacular October afternoon. And the color there is golden, all golden. Not the reds and the oranges, you know, where I grew up, but exquisite, luminous golden. And, you know, I had a hard time paying attention to the road because of everything that was brought to my eyes. I was mesmerized. So I went through, I stopped at the monastery, and I went through Aspen, and I had originally thought maybe I'd stay overnight. But I decided it was too expensive a place for my budget. And so I decided to go over Independence Pass. And it was a spectacular white knuckle trip. Independence Pass has no guardrails. It was my first time doing a mountain pass. And I tell you, it is not for the faint-hearted. So I had decided to wait and get gas in Leadville, because at that point they had just closed the molybdenum mines in Climax, Colorado. So all of those little mountain towns were facing real economic difficulty once again. And the papers had been full of them. And I paid attention to the economic consequences that were predicted, because my own early relatives had been copper miners in the UP of Michigan. And we still had a homestead there, and I knew what those towns looked like after the mines closed. So I drove through Leadville, glad to be off that pass, and got gas. Then I headed back to Denver. That evening I called my dad, who was still living then, and told him about my day. And his response astounded me. He said, "Did you say hello to your great uncles who went there to mine after the copper mines closed, and your great aunts went to keep house for them?" I had stopped there thinking, you know, I understand miners, we have some connection. I had never heard this part of the family story. And Dad went on to say, you know, one of them married a Sullivan, you could probably find him in the cemetery, and I was speechless. Later that evening, when I was praying over the day, I realized in a deeper way, these are my people. The next day when I prayed, I had another realization. This is how God sees each of us and all of us. These are my people. You expressed it, what happens when you share on that level. Now, I had taught this theologically, I'm sure, but there was a whole new level of realization, and it shaped my ministry ever since. Wherever I am, can I say from my spirit, these are my people? Because you do things differently. It is how the Trinity sees. And it's this kind of foundation that we hope our parishes might start to function from. And I'll suggest why I think this should be the rock bottom. Saint Ignatius of Loyola has a contemplation in the 30-day retreat that helps us go further. At the beginning of the second week of the exercises, which is a week on the life of Christ, he has a contemplation for those who want to be serious disciples. It's called the Contemplation on the Incarnation. He begins by suggesting that we ask for the grace to know Jesus intimately, to know him more intensely and love him more intensely so that we can follow him more closely. That's the song from God's Spell. It comes right, day by day, comes right from the exercises. Then he asks us to try to enter the vision of God and God's triune life. And he says, when the Trinity looks upon the earth, what does the Trinity see? And he suggests he sees everyone. Some are happy and devoted, some are aimless, some are hateful, some are killing each other, some are in political fights, some are sick and dying, some are being born, some are being laid to rest, some are going through another hurricane. Look how many of the things that you actually brought up. This is what God sees looking down upon the earth. And then Ignatius says, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit have a leap of divine joy. Because God knows the time has come to send the second person of the Trinity to earth, to show humanity what God is like and what God does when God walks upon the earth. From your familiarity with the Gospels, you know the kind of thoughtful and concrete things Jesus did and what these meant to people. This is what we would hope will come as your parish wants to reach out, that we might come from this kind of vision and sense of God wanting to take flesh in a particular place. Because like Mary, we're asked if we will continue to give birth to Jesus. Will we continue the mystery of the Incarnation in time and in our corner of the world, in our Archdiocese? Perhaps a first step could be to make this contemplation individually and as a parish. With the Trinity, gaze, not stare, gaze on your corner of the world in the Archdiocese. With the Father and the Son and the Spirit, what do you see that invites incarnation? So it's not that we haven't done anything before, but as we look together now, at this moment in our history, what do we see that invites incarnation? A pet peeve or a pet project immediately leaps to your mind, especially if you're clenching your teeth. You probably haven't gazed long enough. Someone asked how my community was. Was it a good community? I said, we've worked hard. We have a good community. 5 years ago, I might have clenched my teeth about some aspects of it, but we have worked hard. There might be another way to look at it. This Archdiocese is at a very important juncture, at a very important moment in the church. Many eyes are upon us, and I think the Cardinal and Bishop Schultz could speak eloquently of what their experience was when they went to Rome for the Ad Limina this spring. People are very interested in this church in the Southwest because we're growing. We have enviable RCI statistics, even if Atlanta beat us this year. We have vitality. We are incredibly multicultural, with both the blessings and the challenges that come from that. The first year that I attended the Chrism Mass here, and I have lived many places, and I have been for some periods of time in several parts of the world, my jaw fell to the floor looking at our presbyterate. I have never any place seen a multicultural mix of priests in the way that we have here. And I'm sure it's not always easy, but it's a very important moment. No place else in the church has such a mix. Another way to ask the question, what would we like our legacy to be at this point in the 21st century? What is God's dream for this church that we might help God make flesh? And that's a different way to ask the question, and it's more than, will we have the most baptisms? But what could we be that people would say, can we learn from them? See what I mean by just asking the question in a slightly different way. And what you might find out in your parishes is that where you would least suspect it, someone might have an insight that knocks the socks off. To say, oh, we never thought about that, but it's perfect, it's brilliant. But we need to take time to say, what do you think God might dream? What do you dream? Bigger in some ways than our parish, but also our parish. But Father often talks about, what if clusters of parishes had a vision for one area that would really be incarnation? Once again, I ask myself, have I ever seen even a small gesture make a difference? Two things came to mind. One I experienced and one I read about. And I'll talk about at least one of them. You remember when Hurricane Andrew hit Florida? What is that now? It's more than 10 years. And many of the plans that we've kind of struggled to put in place since Katrina and even Ike weren't in place in quite the same way. But it was an absolutely devastating hurricane for that whole Homestead area, you know, that was home to a lot of military families, bases, people, just folks who worked hard. And in those days, they were still asking people to send things, whereas now they almost restrict your contributions to money or water. They were asking for things. And we were talking about how we might respond as a campus ministry community, because I had 20 work study students. So, you know, we had a labor force. And I was watching the news one night, and they showed a scene outside of Homestead. And because there had been so much rain, everything was still pretty much mud. And they were bringing in dump trucks of clothes, blankets, just dumping them in the mud.
Oh my God.
And people were there trying to pick something out. I remember first being astounded and then being in a rage. I thought, these people have had everything taken away from them. They have to be desperate to go picking through the mud for a pair of pants or a shirt. Where is the sense of dignity? So as a small university, we had sent word out for clothes with the words, "Not your trash, please, and clothes." So I had seen this and I thought, we've got to do something. So I gathered the 20 students and said, would you all go to Walmart and Target and first ask if they would make a donation of Ziploc bags, big Ziploc bags. They brought them back, and we bought some. And I said, we are going to fold every single piece of clothing. We're going to put it in a Ziploc bag. We're going to put a Regis label on it that says men's shirt, size extra large or whatever. And he looked at me. And I tell you, not one man on my staff knew how to fold a shirt. One. So we had shirt folding lessons, underwear folding lessons, sock putting together lessons, and we filled all of these bags. We asked the Regis community for bags, Ziploc bags, also in boxes. We started to fill them. We had a lot of boxes. And I'd see something full of rips and stuff, and I said, trash, guys, we are not sending that. That doesn't help anybody's dignity. So we got all these boxes together, and somebody who had deeper pockets than campus ministry agreed to do the postage. And they were sending them to parishes near the area, but parishes that weren't badly hit, and that were almost completely populated with senior citizens who were tired by this point, trying to sort all this stuff. We later learned because someone called one of our sisters in West Palm Beach and said, on this Tuesday morning, somebody slid a box, and they said they were just so tired, and they thought, oh my God, here's another. And he let out a scream and said, look at this. Take this box back up and just send them all. We don't have to sort. This was only the first part. At Christmas time, they had asked for Christmas gifts. And so we called the school that we knew was right in the center of it through a social worker and said, what can we send? And she said, they send everything for the babies, all the stuffed animals. We have nothing for middle school boys. Is there any chance you could send some small portable radios with extra batteries? Because there's violence in the families. People have nothing, they're at work, no TV, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, sure, we'd be happy to do that. Who shall I send them to? And so I told her who we were, and there was this dead silence. And she said, you're the school that sent the bags of clothes. And I said, yes. She said, the people came to me with tears in their eyes and said, we feel like we were in a store. Now, I had no idea what the impact would be, but it was transformative. It was just, you would see it in the mud too and say, oh, I don't think that helps at all. And those kids, it was fun. It was hilarious. Well, come on, sister, I'll just put this shirt in the bag. No, you fold it this way, you fold the sleeves, you turn it up. But we felt like we were in a store. So this is really what incarnation looks like with the skill that you have and who you are, that doesn't require truckloads of money, doesn't require that you be a CEO of a corporation. It just takes spending some time looking. But it was transformative. It was transformative for the kids. So there may be something in your corner of the earth that could be well served by enhancing people's dignity. I mean, I was asking myself when I wanted to, for giving me the practical things, have I ever seen it? What's it like? But you might get something this. I learned on one of the universities where I taught, what was the biggest need? And all the young mothers said, we need daycare on campus. Now, I'm neither stupid nor thoughtless, but I hadn't thought of daycare because I wasn't facing the problem of daycare every day. So this is the kind of thing that could come out of your parish when they try to dream with God. The second one that came out for me, I'm not great, if somebody wants to know, I can tell you about it. There were 4 people that went to Rwanda after the terrible, terrible killings there. It comes from a wonderful book called Finding Beauty in a Broken World. And while they were trying to plan to build really bone repositories, they just had bones lying every place. While that project was being worked on, these 4 artists, one of whom was a Chinese-American artist who helped transform Philadelphia, taught the children how to draw and paint. And then they went, all the houses were like gray stucco, and they started to paint on the houses. And they painted all the houses in the village. And they got more creative than the artists wanted them to. But they let loose. They painted borders on the houses. And when they were ready to leave Rwanda, and I'm condensing it, the women gathered and said, thank you for showing us our houses could be beautiful. It has helped us get to know each other and build community and heal from the genocide. And it gave our children pleasure to know they could do something, and it gave us pleasure to see our children happy. That wasn't even the major project, but someone had said, look, you've got to do something with the kids, they're the future. Someone said, well, I'm an art teacher, I can teach them to draw. They said now it has broadened to dozens of villages from Rwanda. We didn't know our houses could be beautiful. It's wonderful, isn't it? Yes. And it's simple. It is this kind of thing, I think, that could come up if you say, let's dream with God. Where would God like to make incarnation? Recently, who gave this poem, this prayer, really. What we're asking for is much more than $3 worth of God. So after I read the poem, we're going to ask you to be in either dyads or triads. And just ask yourself if you've ever tasted a dream that you've never known how to start to put forth, or how you might do this within your parish. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. We don't have a lot of time left because Rita needs some time. But it could get you started on some practical ways that you might work within your parishes. Because we want more than $3 worth of God. But this is what $3 worth of God is. I would like to buy $3 worth of God, please. Not enough to explode my soul and disturb my sleep. Not enough to take control of my life. I want just enough to equal a cup of warm milk. Just enough to ease some of the pain from my guilt. I would like to find a love that is pocket-sized. I don't want enough of God to make me love a black man or pick beets with a migrant. Not enough to change my heart. I can only stand just enough to take to church when I have time. Just enough to equal a snooze in the sunshine. I want ecstasy, not transformation. I want the warmth of the womb, but not a new birth. I would like to purchase a pound of the eternal in a paper sack. And if it doesn't work, I'd like to get my money back. I would like to buy $3 worth of God, please. I would like to hide some for a rainy day. Not enough for people to see a change in me. Not enough to impose any responsibility. Just enough to make folks think I'm okay. Could I get just $3 worth of God, please? good, isn't it? But you want to reach beyond $3 worth of gold. So start to say, is there any way you think we could dream, or what do you think we'd like our legacy to be as a diocese?